So on the bench today then I've got another wireless product by KASENS, and this name seems to be quite big with the Chinese market and the cheap side of eBay and Amazon. This is one of the Wi-Fi adapters with the panel antenna that I looked at quite recently, but this time we've got a big panel antenna in the middle here, but we've got these two omnidirectional antennas, dipole antennas at either side. So if you wanted to use this and for close-up range, for instance, if you're in the same room as this, the two omnidirectionals would do the job. But if you want a bit more range, you've got this panel antenna in the middle, which will give you a lot more range than the two omnidirectional dipoles. Now this also has its Wi-Fi card actually built into the base of this, and you just connect it with your USB cable, connect it up to your laptop or whatever. The box does say just about every operating system that you can think of it actually connects to. Whether it does or not, I don't know, but I just want to show you the box because the box is kind of funny in its own right. So this is the box, but the box actually reminds me of the kind of box you'd get with a graphics card. I have no idea what the God of War graphic on here has got to do with Wi-Fi. It just looks to me like they've just taken this image and then just photoshopped a picture of the antenna there in the corner. So I don't know if this packaging was originally for something else and they've just repurposed this. I've got no idea, but it just looks very, very strange to me. And as far as the 600 milliwatts and the 68 dBi is concerned, I think we can just exclude that straight off the bat. It's going to be nowhere near that. You'd be lucky if it's 1000 milliwatts, but we'll see when we test it. And most of the writing on this box is just completely meaningless to the product itself, but I think they've just copied and pasted and stuck it on the side here. But this did catch my eye, which is quite funny. It's distance adjustment for long range transmission up to 50 kilometers. So I just find it quite funny with a lot of these Chinese products, how they exaggerate the power of their product and the performance of their product. It's not even a double exaggeration. I mean, I probably would have thought if this is a panel antenna, it'd probably be around 9 dBi, nowhere near 68 dBi. It's just, it's not even an exaggeration, it's just complete bull. And as for Chinese products like this, some people get quite upset and they get quite on the high horse about how it's all rubbish and tack and not worth it. But to be quite honest with you, without China in the marketplace today, a lot of the prices for the products that I actually buy for my hobby, making antennas and general small little electronics projects and that sort of thing, I wouldn't be able to make as much as I do, different prototypes and things, as I would if we didn't have China in the marketplace. The cost of the parts would I'd probably be making one project a month instead of one project a week. So it's not that I dislike China, it's just that if you buy something like this, just keep an open mind that the quality control isn't there like a product bought from Europe, the United States or Germany, something like that. The quality control isn't there with a lot of these Chinese products. So before we actually take a look inside this antenna then, I thought it'd be a good idea to just power it on and we'll do a quick scan just from my window here in the lab, just to see how many access points we can pick up. And to be perfectly honest with you, this product here by the same company, I did a video on this a few weeks ago. I'm expecting it to be probably about the same. This is a panel antenna in here, and I'm expecting, even though it looks bigger, to be the same panel antenna that's in here. So I'm expecting it to be about the same, which this wasn't too bad at all. It it performed quite well for the money. It wasn't 60 dBi by no means, but it wasn't too bad. And the adapter that's built in here, I'm presuming, will also be the same as the adapter that came with this. I can't see them investing a lot of money in different adapters, although you know, another thing with a lot of these Chinese products is just because I purchased this, it might not be exactly the same as one you purchased 6 months ago. They just get whatever they can get for cheap in the Shenzhen market that particular week. So I've got it on the windowsill in the lab then, so let's give it a quick scan and see what we can pick up. So it's not off to a great start, we'll just let it settle down. So it's not as good as the previous KASENS antenna, that little panel antenna. I'm only picking up 12 hotspots there. Now, even the antenna in my laptop, you know, just the internal Wi-Fi card in the laptop, can pick up more access points than 12. I live in a house, it is detached, but all the houses around here are quite close together. So I would expect, especially the omnidirectional antennas, to pick up at least 6 or 7 access points on their own. And then you've got the panel antenna in the middle. I would have expected to have seen at least 20 Wi-Fi hotspots there. I don't, you know, I'm not impressed with that at all, just 14, and you know, 4 of those are actually dead, so it's not exactly a performer. So that test was a little bit disappointed then, so what we'll do, we'll crack this open and we'll have a look at what's actually inside here. Now the actual panel antenna itself just looks like it's plastic clips. I can't see any screws there at all, but on the base here there's 4 Phillips head screws, and this is a piece of galvanized steel just to add weight so it's more stable on its base there. So that's the way to get in. So we'll crack those screws open and we'll have a look what's in there first. So now that we've actually got the base off and we can see inside, you can see quite clearly that the 2 omnidirectional antennas are not connected in any way to this little wireless card. There's no coax, there's no evidence of any solder in the past, so they have never been connected up to this wireless card. The 2 omnidirectional antennas are just there for show, they're not connected in any way. I just find that rather bizarre. So this is probably the worst antenna I've seen so far, and yeah, they're just there for show, but the actual specifications on the eBay site and on the side of the box clearly state the 3 antennas, 2 omnidirectional antennas and the panel directional antenna, but it's not connected in any way at all. So now we've got the wireless card out of the unit, the fun doesn't actually stop there. If you can notice here with this coax, you'll notice that there's no actual ground plane soldered on there, so the outer braid of the coax is just cut off and it's not connected in any way to the ground plane of the card here. You've just got the signal wire, the center connector of the coax soldered in place, and you've got the 4 solder points here for the ground plane, which would normally take something like a PCB mounted SMA connector, but this coax is not connected in any way to the ground plane of this antenna at all. And as for the USB card itself, it just looks like a generic little Wi-Fi card that's utilising one of the Railink chipsets. I can't remember which chipset it is now, but it's supposed to be 6,000 milliwatts of power, this card, but I can't see any kind of amplification on there at all that would give it 6,000 milliwatts of power. It's probably you know, around 1,000 milliwatts, possibly even 500 milliwatts, but definitely not 6,000 milliwatts. So as far as this antenna goes, then so far it's not installing any kind of confidence. As you saw in the test, it performed really poorly, and a big part of that would probably be the coax not being connected back to the ground plane on this little adapter, and also the fact that these omnidirectional antennas with the bulkhead SMAs here are just there for show. They don't do any kind of you know, performance adding to this antenna at all. I just find that a little bit unbelievable. So we'll have a look at the panel antenna next then, and as I said, there's no screws to get into this, so I'm going to get a little pry tool in between there and hopefully it'll just pop straight off. So now that I've got the lid off, what we've got is one of these parabolic panel antennas, and we've seen these before. I've done a teardown of one of these in a previous video, so I'm not going to go over the measurements too much, but basically we've got the driven element here, this circle in the middle, and the main reflector, which is an active reflector at the back here. And the coax is actually soldered in properly. You've got the outer braid soldered into the ground plane here, and the inner core soldered directly to the driven element here. So one thing that I've just noticed about this is this metal tab here is actually bent over and bent down and making contact with the reflector itself, so it's actually shorted out the antenna. Now what that means is, if the Wi-Fi adapter was soldered in correctly and the ground plane was actually soldered down in there, you would have serious issues with this little Wi-Fi card. And it definitely, if it was 6,000 milliwatts, it would have burnt itself out quite quickly. But basically, if it was soldered in properly at the Wi-Fi card end, this little antenna would fail over time. The reflections that will be sent back down the coax to this Wi-Fi card would be so great it would actually burn itself out in time. So this is just a completely poor build of an antenna. It's a catalogue of errors, and I can't believe how bad it actually is. So what I would normally do with something like this then is try and correct the errors and improve it so it's a you know, half decent working antenna, but I'm not actually going to do that with this one. I've looked at this kind of antenna previously, so you know, I'm not going to go back over that old ground again. But the little Wi-Fi card has just snapped off with me actually manhandling this, so I'll probably keep this and put a little PCB mount SMA connector on the end there, and you know, I may use this in a project in the future. But I just can't believe how many errors there are wrong with this little antenna. And you know, it's a little bit disappointing really, because the idea of having the two omnidirectional antennas down here and then the directional antenna on here, so you can actually direct some Wi-Fi signal into an area that may be dead in your house, or you just want to turn it round and get some Wi-Fi in your garden when it's summer, for instance. I think that kind of idea is something that you know, I think some other manufacturers should take on board, especially when it comes to building routers and repeaters. And I've removed the little SMA bulkhead connector from the antenna, and I've never seen one like this before. I don't know how you would go around actually connecting the coax to this at all. I've never seen anything like it before, but it's definitely there just for cosmetic reasons on this antenna. And the little dipole antenna itself just looks very, very cheap. The white plastic is discoloured, almost dirty, and it looks like the cover here has been strained to get over the top of this. It looks like it's been forced on. It's stretched the plastic a little bit there, so you know, it's cheap. And I've just popped the lid off one of these, and the catalogue of errors with this antenna just continues, because basically there's nothing inside. We've got the cylindrical tube here that's normal on a dipole antenna, but there's no driven element at all, just some heat shrink tubing. So it's very strange. I don't get it at all. And I take it back about there not being a driven element with this little dipole. It does have a driven element here, and if I measure it, it's coming in at around 12 millimeters. Now if this was a 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi dipole antenna, that driven element should measure 13.4 millimeters, and again, if this was a 5.8 gigahertz antenna for say FPV, this driven element here should measure 9.6 millimeters. So I'm not quite sure what this is. It's a little bit too short for 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and it's way too short for 5.8 gigahertz. I'm just wondering whether anybody just chopped this off because they were just going to use them for cosmetic reasons in this antenna. But I'm going to crack it open here, and we'll measure the actual ground plane part of this dipole antenna, and that might give us a better clue. So I've got it out of its housing. I just cut off the coax at the base there. Now if this was a 2.4 gigahertz little rubber duck antenna, the cylinder ground plane part of this antenna should come in at 25 millimeters, and this does because remember we have to measure at the top here, where at the peak of that solder there. So all that is ground plane, and it is 25mm. So I'm just wondering if they've picked these up cheap at the Shenzhen market there, because somebody's made an error and cut the main driven element off on these antennas far too short. So they just purchased them to use them for cosmetic reasons in this antenna. I don't know, but that's definitely 2.4 GHz. So somebody has probably chopped that off too short. So there's not much left to say about this antenna, only that if you see one of these on eBay, do not click the buy it now button. It's just not worth the money. The only way I would purchase one of these again in the future is if it turned up in my local pound shop, and I would buy them just to harvest the little Wi-Fi adapters out of to use in projects. The rest of it is just junk. So I hope you found this little teardown interesting, and I'm trying to find some information on the company itself. The KASENS antenna website seems to be Spanish, so I'm not sure whether it's a Spanish manufacturer having their goods made in China. I don't think it is, because there's just too many Chinese sellers actually selling these. So I'm not quite sure what the connection is there with Spain, because there's a lot of YouTube videos as well that are Spanish talking about these products from the KASENS, the Wi-Fi adapters and different antennas. But so I'm a little bit unsure whether it is actually a Spanish company, but I definitely purchased this off a Chinese trader on eBay. So again, I hope you found this video useful, and you know, if you are looking to increase your Wi-Fi coverage in your house or your small office, then you know, do not buy this. It's a piece of junk. So hopefully, if you enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up, and hopefully you'll join me on the next one.